I remember the heat of the grill more than I remember their faces. That's what I think about sometimes when I try to reconstruct that afternoon. The way the charcoal smoke caught the back of my throat and made my eyes water, so that when I smiled through the joke, it could have been because of the burning briquettes. People don't ask why your eyes are wet at a barbecue. They assume it's the onions or the wind or the cheap beer hitting the wrong spot. The joke came somewhere between the potato salad and the burgers being flipped. My husband's sister, Claire, had this way of speaking that made everything sound like a toast and a jab at the same time. She was the kind of person who could say something cruel with a laugh and make you feel like you were the problem for not laughing back. She had that family gift. The one that turned every comment into a test of belonging. If you disappeared tomorrow, she said, gesturing at me with her wine glass, no one would even notice. And then she laughed, and then everyone laughed. I looked around the circle. My husband, David, was laughing. His mother, Patricia, was laughing. His father, Frank, had that tight-lipped smile that meant he found it funny but wouldn't admit to finding it funny. The cousins, the aunts, the family friends who'd been absorbed into this orbit over the years. They laughed, too. The only person not laughing was me, and I wasn't angry. That's the part I still think about, a year later. I wasn't angry. I didn't feel that hot spike of humiliation or the cold knot of betrayal. I felt something else, something that in retrospect was more dangerous. I felt seen, but not in the way you want to be seen. I felt like the joke had just described my life in a way that everyone in that circle already understood to be true, and my only choice was whether to pretend otherwise or not. I didn't want to pretend, so I raised my hot dog. One of those cheap ones, neon pink in the middle, the kind that tastes like a memory of meat. I pointed it at Claire like a prophet pointing a finger. Challenge accepted, I said. There was a beat of silence. Claire's smile flickered. Then everyone laughed again. Because it was a joke, wasn't it? Of course it was a joke. The quiet one in the corner finally made a joke, except I wasn't joking. And the thing about being invisible is that people don't notice when you stop pretending to be visible. They don't notice the shift. They just keep laughing. I didn't plan it. That's what I told myself as I drove to the apartment that night, and what I told myself for the first few months after, whenever I thought about what I'd done. It wasn't a plan. It was more like a door swinging open in a room I didn't know I was standing in. I just walked through it. The barbecue ended in the usual way. Claire made another toast. The kids ran through the sprinkler. David got into a conversation with his father about the roof on the garage, and I watched them from the patio chair, and I realized that no one had looked at me for an hour and a half. No one had said my name. I was a piece of furniture that could hold a plate. David drove us home. He was in a good mood, humming something off-key, one hand on the steering wheel and one hand tapping on the console. I didn't speak. I sat in the passenger seat and stared out the window at the houses going by, each one a box of light containing people who probably knew each other's names. "You were quiet today," David said, pulling into the driveway. "Was I? You're always quiet." He said it not as a complaint but as a fact. A weather report. "It's fine, they don't mind, they don't mind." I turned that phrase over in my mind like a stone, looking for the smooth side. It wasn't a compliment, it wasn't an insult, it was just nothing. A void where an observation about me would have been. Inside, I took a shower. I dried my hair. I brushed my teeth. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, the steam curling around my face like the smoke from the grill, and I thought, they wouldn't notice, not because I was ugly or unremarkable or boring. I wasn't any of those things, I don't think. I was just absent. I had become a background detail in someone else's family portrait. A smudge on the glass that no one had thought to wipe away. I went into the bedroom. David was already asleep, his back turned to my side of the bed. He had the air conditioner on high, and the room was cold and humming. I stood in the doorway for a long time, just watching him breathe. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel anything. That was when I knew. The packing took about 3 hours. It wasn't complicated. I didn't have that much that was truly mine. Most of the furniture belonged to David before we got married. The books on the shelves were his. The art on the walls was chosen by Patricia from that one gallery she liked. My things were small: a box of photographs I'd taken on my phone, a stack of journals, a green sweater that had been my grandmother's, a passport that was 2 years from expiring. I put them in a duffel bag and a cardboard box. Then I wrote the note. I wrote, "I'm fine. Don't look for me. This isn't about you." It wasn't true and it wasn't false. It was somewhere in between, which is the only place most notes live. I put it on the kitchen counter next to the coffee maker. I made sure the edge was aligned with the grout line on the tile, because I knew that if I didn't, I would spend the rest of my life wondering if he'd even seen it. If I aligned it perfectly, he would see it. He would have to. Then I called an Uber. It arrived at 2:17 a.m. The driver was a man named Raj, who asked if I was going to the airport. "No," I said. "Just a hotel for now." He looked at my duffel bag and my cardboard box in the rearview mirror. "Traveling light?" Something like that. He didn't ask more questions. I gave him a 5-star rating the next morning. Even though I didn't have his name anymore, the hotel room smelled like bleach and air freshener. I took another shower. I lay on the bed and watched the ceiling fan rotate, and I didn't cry. I didn't feel like crying. I felt like I'd just taken a step off a ledge and discovered that the ground was only 6 inches down. I'd been invisible for so long that disappearing wasn't a loss. It was a correction. The first week was the hardest. Not because I missed anyone, I didn't. But the silence was strange. No text messages. No calls. I'd turned off my phone after the first night because I didn't want to see the notifications that weren't coming. But eventually I turned it back on. 3 missed calls from David. 1 voicemail. I listened to it sitting on the edge of the bed, the hotel comforter pulled up to my chin even though it was summer and the air conditioning was broken. "I don't understand what happened," he said. His voice sounded tired, a little baffled. Not angry, not frantic, just confused. "If this is about something," Claire said, "you know she doesn't mean anything. She's just like that. You know how she is. You know how she is," that phrase. That placating, dismissive, smoothing over phrase. I'd heard it so many times over the years that it had become white noise. Like the hum of the refrigerator. Like the drone of the air conditioning. I deleted the voicemail. Then I went to the front desk and asked if they had any vacancies for a longer stay. I found the apartment on Craigslist. It was a basement studio in a neighborhood I'd never heard of, with a single window at ground level that looked out onto someone's hydrangea bush. The landlord was a woman named Mrs. Cho who didn't ask questions and didn't care about references. She wanted first month's rent and a security deposit, and she didn't smile when I paid her. "Quiet," she said. "No parties. No loud music. You don't bother me, I don't bother you." "Perfect," I said. It was the best deal I'd ever made. I didn't tell anyone where I was. I changed my phone number. I got a new email address. I blocked David on every platform I could think of, but it wasn't about anger. It was about boundary. A line I was drawing in the sand of my own life. My mother called 4 times. I didn't answer. I sent a text. "I'm fine. Need some space. I'll call when I'm ready." She texted back. "Honey," David called. "He's worried. What's going on?" I didn't respond. My father sent a text too. "Your mother is beside herself." I read it, felt the familiar weight of being someone else's problem, and closed the app. I was learning something about myself. I was learning that I'd spent my whole life being a spectator in my own existence. I'd watched myself go through the motions, the weddings, the funerals, the holidays, the barbecues, and I'd done it with a smile, with a plate, with a useful pair of hands. I'd been reliable, I'd been agreeable, I'd been easy to forget, and I had forgotten myself in the process. I spent the first month in the basement apartment reading books I'd always meant to read. I watched movies I'd always wanted to see. I learned how to cook meals that weren't for anyone else, just for me. I ate an entire carton of ice cream in one sitting and didn't feel guilty. I was relearning how to be a person. The therapy started at 6 weeks, not because I was broken. I wasn't broken. But I needed to understand what had happened, and I needed someone to help me map it out. The therapist's name was Dr. Cheryl, a woman in her 60s who wore colorful scarves and had a framed photo of her dog on her desk. "Tell me about the joke," she said in our second session. And I did. I told her about the barbecue, the hot dog, the laughter, the way Claire had looked at me with that wine glass tipped in my direction. The way I'd said challenge accepted and smiled through the smoke and meant it. Dr. Cheryl listened. She didn't nod or frown or make any of those therapist faces. She just listened. "Was it the joke that made you leave?" she said. "Or was it the laughter?" It was a good question. It took me the rest of the session to answer. "It was the laughter," I said. "The joke was just the joke." But the laughter was a verdict. Everyone in that circle agreed. They agreed that I was peripheral. They agreed that my absence wouldn't register. And when I looked at David, he was laughing too. And I understood that he had never seen me. Not really. He saw a space he'd filled with a shape that looked like me, but he was laughing at the idea that I could vanish. Because to him, I was already vanished. I'd been vanished for years. Dr. Cheryl tapped her pen against her notebook. "And the challenge?" she said. "The challenge accepted." "I meant it," I said. "I think I'd been meaning it for a long time. I just hadn't said it out loud." The divorce papers came at 8 months. They arrived in a manila envelope that I almost threw away unopened. I recognized the handwriting on the front. David's handwriting. The same blocky letters he used on grocery lists and birthday cards. I carried the envelope around my apartment for 2 days before I opened it. He'd filed for divorce. I should have felt something. I felt relieved. There was a letter inside, folded neatly. Handwritten. "I don't know what to say. I don't know how to fix this because I don't really know what broke. But I can't keep being married to someone I can't find. That's not a marriage. That's waiting for a ghost. I loved you. I think I still love you, but I don't know who you are anymore. Maybe I never did." I read it 3 times. Each time I felt a little less it was true. He didn't know who I was. But he'd never asked. He'd never looked. He'd accepted the version of me that was easy to accept. The quiet one, the agreeable one, the one who blended in with the furniture at his family's barbecues. And when I stopped being that person, he had nothing to hold on to, because I'd never been anything else to him. I was just a shape. I signed the papers and mailed them back. I didn't go to the court date. I had a lawyer, a woman named Kelly who'd been recommended by the local women's shelter, not because I was in danger, but because she specialized in quiet dissolutions. That was the phrase she used. Quiet dissolutions. Marriages that didn't blow up, just evaporated. Kelly handled it. David's lawyer handled it. I stayed in my apartment and drank tea and watched the hydrangea bush outside my window change colors as the seasons shifted. It was over without anyone shouting. It was over without anyone crying. It was over the way it had always been, quietly. The turning point came at 11 months. I wasn't looking for it. I'd stopped looking for anything. Really. I'd accepted a new job at a small publishing house, editing manuscripts that would never be bestsellers, but that deserved to be read. I'd adopted a cat from the shelter, a gray tabby with a clipped ear and an attitude problem. I'd started going for walks in the morning, before the city woke up, before the streets filled with people who didn't know me and never would. I'd started to feel like I existed, not because anyone else could see me, but because I could see myself. And then, one evening in early summer, I got an email from a name I didn't recognize, the subject line, "Old family photos?" I opened it. The sender was someone I didn't know. A cousin-in-law of David's, maybe? A friend of the family? The email was brief, slightly apologetic. "Hey, I'm putting together a slideshow for Patricia and Frank's 40th anniversary, and I'm trying to collect photos from the last few years. I don't have many from your side of the family. Did you ever take any at the barbecues? Let me know." Thanks, I stared at the screen. This person didn't know I'd left. Or maybe they knew and didn't care. Maybe they were just being polite, going through the motions of inviting someone to contribute to something they wouldn't attend. The email was so ordinary, so mundane, that it felt like a punch. I typed a reply. I don't have any photos. Sorry. I pressed send and closed my laptop. Later that night, I opened Instagram. I didn't follow anyone from David's family anymore. I'd unfollowed and blocked my way into a digital bubble where no one knew my name. But I knew how to search. I typed in Claire's name, her profile was public. An influencer of sorts, fashion, lifestyle, the occasional post about how grateful she was for her family. I scrolled, past pictures of her engagement ring, past pictures of a trip to Cabo, past pictures of her and her friends at brunch, all of them laughing into their mimosas. And then a post from 1 week ago, a photo of the annual summer barbecue, the same backyard, the same grill, the same faces arranged in the same formations around the same picnic table. Claire was in the center, of course. Patricia was there, Frank was there, David was there, looking slightly thinner and grayer around the edges. I looked at the comments, there were dozens, all of them variations of the same thing. What a beautiful family. So nice to see everyone together. Looks like so much fun. And then at the bottom, one comment that stopped me cold from someone I didn't know. Someone who'd been at the barbecue, maybe. A friend of a friend, or a neighbor, or a coworker. Where's my name? I stared at it, and then I watched the reply from Claire. Ho? That one word, ho? It wasn't a question, it was a dismissal, a denial. A refusal to even acknowledge the existence of the person who'd been at their table for years, who'd brought casseroles to their holiday dinners, who'd helped decorate their Christmas tree, who'd been photographed and documented, and then, when it was convenient, forgotten. I read the word over and over. I expected to feel angry. I expected to feel humiliated. I expected to feel that hot, helpless rage that I'd suppressed for so many years. But I didn't feel any of those things. I felt something else. I felt seen, not by Claire. Claire hadn't seen me. She'd never seen me. But I saw her. I saw her in a way she would never see herself. I saw the desperation underneath the bravado. I saw the need to be the center of attention, the need to be the one everyone looked at, the need to be the sun around which the whole family revolved. And I saw the emptiness that came with it. She didn't say who, because she'd forgotten me. She said who, because she couldn't admit that she remembered, that my absence had created a hole, that her joke, the one she'd thought was so clever, so cutting, so effortlessly cruel, had landed, and it had landed on her. I was gone, and in my absence something had shifted. A little bit of gravity, a little bit of balance. Claire had always been the one who made everyone laugh. She was the center, she was the one everyone wanted to be around, she was the sun. But now there was a shadow at the edge of her light. A shadow she couldn't quite explain. A shadow that reminded her, every time she posed for a photo and remembered the person who wasn't there, that her joke had been a prophecy. And prophecies don't come true without a cost. I didn't write back to the cousin-in-law. I didn't comment on Claire's post. I didn't reach out to David or his mother or anyone else. I didn't need to. Something had broken in me and something else had healed. I sat on the floor of my apartment, my cat on my lap, and I realized that I had done what I'd set out to do. I had disappeared. I had vanished from their lives so completely that they had to pretend I'd never existed, and that was its own kind of victory, not because I'd hurt them. I hadn't, not because I'd made them suffer. I hadn't. But because I'd proven that I could exist without their approval. I could be a person without their audience. I could be seen by people who didn't need to see me. I was nobody's ghost. I was my own. I wrote the letter at 3 in the morning, not a letter to them, a letter to myself. A letter that I would never send, that I would never show anyone, that I would fold into a square and tuck into the back of a drawer. It said, I was never the one who disappeared. I was the one who was never seen. And the difference is this: when a disappearing person goes, you notice the shape they leave behind. When a person who was never seen goes, you don't notice anything at all. You just feel the absence like a cold draft in a room you didn't know was drafty. You don't know what's missing, you just know something is. I'm not missing anymore. I never was. I moved again at 12 months, not because I was running, because I was ready. I was ready to find a place that felt like mine, not a place that felt like a hiding spot. I found a small apartment on the top floor of a converted Victorian, with a clawfoot tub and a fire escape that overlooked the street. I painted the walls yellow, I bought plants. I started going to a book club on Thursday nights. A group of women who talked about novels like they were lifelines. They didn't know my full story. They didn't need to. They just knew that I was funny and sharp, and that I made good guacamole. One night, at the end of a meeting, the host, a woman named Maya, asked if anyone had any upcoming plans. I'm going to see my sister this weekend, someone said, flying out Friday. I'm painting the nursery, someone else said. They looked at me. What about you? Maya asked. I paused. I thought about the barbecue, the smoke, the laughter, the hot dog raised like a toast. I'm just going to stay here, I said. Read a book, do nothing. They laughed. Not at me, with me. An inclusive laugh, not an exclusive one. That sounds perfect, Maya said. And it did, it was perfect. I don't know if they ever found the note. I don't know if David ever looked at the kitchen counter and saw the edge of the paper aligned with the grout line. I don't know if he picked it up, read it, set it down. I don't know if he still has it. I don't really care. I think about the barbecue sometimes. The way the sun hit the picnic table, the way the smoke curled up and dissolved, the way Claire laughed, the way David laughed, the way everyone laughed. And I think about the way I raised my hot dog and said challenge accepted. It was a joke, but it was also a promise to myself, a promise to the person I was becoming, a promise that I would never be the easy one to forget again. I kept that promise. Now, a year later, I'm the one who remembers. I'm the one who knows what happened. I'm the one who walked away from the laughter and never looked back. They're the ones who forgot. And that's not revenge. That's not punishment. That's just the natural consequence of never really knowing someone in the first place. You can't miss what you never saw. But they see me now. They see the shape I left behind. And maybe that's enough. The sun is setting over the city. I'm on my balcony with my cat and a cup of tea. The hydrangea bush is blooming below me, purple and blue, and the air smells like rain. I don't know what happens next. I don't need to. I'm not invisible anymore. I'm here. And that's the only thing that matters.